I'm going to show you how to blend, mix, and get the most out of your PanPastels. PanPastels are a medium that was actually invented for artists, and you can see some beautiful artwork out there where they have used these to create very lifelike paintings. In our craft room, we have figured out how to use this PanPastel on our crepe paper, on other papers, and even felt, and I'm going to show you the techniques that we use to get the look. When writing the crepe paper flower book, we found that we had 7 PanPastel colors that we used the most for the 21 flowers in this book. So PanPastel offered to put together a set for us, and this is the Griffith edition. You can find a link for it below. They're all great colors to use, but know that there are 92 PanPastels out there, and we love all of them. When you open up the box, you'll find the 7 pastels, and you'll just take this little plastic tray off. There are 3 pearlescent colors and then 4 of the matte colors. To store these, what we usually do is just put the lid back on, and then I have a little clip to keep everything secure. And that's a good way to keep them clean. I found that the best way to use PanPastel is to blend it. So I have a tulip here with an orange petal. I've added the hot pink PanPastel on the tip, blended it towards the bottom to create this gorgeous ombre look. And I'll show you how to do this. So I've cut out some petals here, and I'm going to show you the technique of using the sponge first. You can use whatever edge of the sponge that you like. I tend to go for the rounded sides. Now I'll just dip that into the pastel. I think I'll go dark to light here. Add as much pigment as possible. You can see there's a lot of pigment in these pastels, which makes it really easy to work with. And then just very gently blend it towards the other direction. And I might turn over and find a clean piece of my sponge and blend it this direction, turn it back this way, and continue to blend. If you feel like you need more pigment, go ahead and add some more. Just make sure that after you've washed your sponges out that you let them dry thoroughly, because you don't want to use the wet sponge with the dry pastel. So this is the effect that I've made on this petal, and at that point I might start to stretch it. And it seems like the pastel stays on the crepe paper quite well. We never use a fixative for the most part. However, if you feel uncomfortable and think that it will rub off, if it's going to be worn on someone's dress or suit, you can use a spray fixative. Another method to get your pigment onto your crepe paper is to use a brush. We keep this jar of brushes. They're only used for pastel. You can see this one has been used. If I brush it onto my paper, nothing's coming off. So you know that you could probably add another color and it wouldn't hurt anything. So we'll dip this into our pearlized pastel, and I'll start on the other end. Now what I have found, this is a much lighter touch. You don't get as much pigment because the brush is soft, and I really do prefer a softer brush for this. But this is if you just want that little tiny touch. It's also a nice method if you're trying to blend. You can bring a brush in after you've used your sponge. So this is a really easy way to get just a little bit of color onto your petal or onto your piece that you're working on. And usually to clean these off, I might just have a paper towel over here and I'll just brush it off. You can, use a wet paper towel, but then again, let your brush dry before you dip it into the pastels again. So for my third petal, I'm going to show you how I blend 2 colors together. And we'll start using a sponge because we want to add a lot of pigment. So let's go for something really bright. I think when painters use these sponges, they might use more of the point side because they're trying to get that detail. I want to add a lot of color, so I'm using the flat side. We'll start at the top and put a lot of this orange pigment onto the paper. And blend it down. I'm going to use another sponge for the other color. Let's do this beautiful magenta color. Switch it to the other side. Just add the pigment to start with. You can pat it on, brush it on. And then, you know, for blending like this, I actually do go back and forth. I have a nice big fat brush here and kind of blend it back and forth. Stop and add some more pigment. I try not to put my orange tip over on the hot pink and vice versa to keep the colors clean, at least on one edge. I think I'll go ahead and even grab some of this pigment with my brush and blend that in. So you can see why I really do like having both options of the sponge and the brush. And this is the result. So they just really do blend beautifully, and you can continue to add pigment on top of pigment and blend it. Something like this, I might go ahead and put a fixative on it because there's a lot of color on here and I don't want it to rub off or flake off. But here, let's give it a little blow. Nah, nothing's coming off. That looks great. I use the PanPastel on the double-sided crepe paper. This is what it looks like on the heavy crepe paper. These beautiful ombre leaves, and you can see how just a little slight gradation in the color makes such a big difference. Here's another example of the heavy crepe paper where I added just a touch of the gold right inside the petals to add that realistic look. And then here's an example of the extra fine crepe paper. After using PanPastels to add color to our crepe paper flowers, we wanted to explore it a little further, and you can see how it looks on these beautiful felt flowers. The protea petals are tipped with the pink. The heliconia has just a little bit of green on the ends. And then the anthurium goes from this pale yellow to a soft green. And what we found is that when we add pastels to our felt, you really don't need a fixative. It does stay in the fiber really well because the grains of the pastel are so fine. Of course, we needed to try PanPastels on our frosted paper, and you can see here in this Easter lily how we added it to the center of our flower. We put the PanPastel on the petals before we assembled the flower, giving it a nice flat surface to blend. And then we put this fixative just to make sure that it doesn't rub off, because if you're using a flatter paper like a frosted paper or even any sort of colored paper, you do want to fix it. The cool thing about this is that you can actually remove color. So if you use an eraser, you can add some texture or dots or lines into your PanPastels after you're done. So it gives it a lot of versatility. So though this material was made for the fine artist, you can see how it is something that is perfect for the crafter. And we use it in so many different ways. It's a staple in our studio, and this 7-piece set is a great place to start.